They tryna turn Trenton into Baby Flint. Been signs by depression on the billboards ever since. 100 years ago we was lynched. Now they use germ warfare to kill us. I'm convinced, got the evidence. I look around and it's evident. They go down to City Hall and see so much negligence. Real art is intelligent. A true artist sends messages that speak to your intelligence. They fought and died so I can do my thing. Not to get drunk and high or join no gang. I will not let none of you die in vain. For my people I bang, bang, bang. My ancestors been through so much pain. I don't let them die in vain. My ancestors been through so much pain. I don't let them die in vain. I rep for you in everything I do. I rep for you in every place I go. I rep for you in everything I do. In every place I go. They say post-traumatic slavery disorder's fake, but I just tell them all to wake up. Everything we went through, what a way down a rape, bro. Isn't all genetic makeup. So I am my ancestors from block to block. Let's build like it's Tetris. We must unite, link up like a necklace. They fought and died and we disrespected. So I come to correct it. The legacy they left I protected. We only think about self and neglected. You're African but yet you rejected. No. My ancestors been through so much pain. I don't let them die in vain. My ancestors been through so much pain. I don't let them die in vain. I rep for you in everything I do. I rep for you in every place I go. I rep for you in everything I do. In every place I go. I do. I go.
Welcome back to another edition of New Freedom Exchange, your cultural expression for social dignity and community empowerment. I'm your co-host, Brother Dean, here with...
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Marsha.
Wa alaikum assalam. Peace and everybody. Peace, peace, peace. This is your boy, Imam Bilal Hassan. We're here. We're back. New Freedom Exchange. Live and direct. Good, blessed Sunday. Hope everyone is having a great Sunday. Wa alaikum assalam. Sister Khadija, as always, thank you for your support. For those who are tuned in, drop where you are at, where you're coming from. We always love to hear where you all are coming from so we can show love to our cities and our places where you're all representing. And so I'm excited to be back. We're excited to be back here. I mean, with you all in the virtual sense, and this building. So how's everyone doing?
Doing well. Packed weekend for sure.
Let's talk about that.
Where's the round of applause?
Get it up. Bring him up.
Oh man, cut it out. No, but this weekend was
The Marsha Show.
Cut it out. It's called She Speaks Volumes.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Get it right. No, but this weekend was jam packed. I mean, I had that's my cousin Chanel. Hey Chanel. We had with the Sisters in Service, we do a Unity Talim. So that was yesterday, and that focused on mental health, especially during this time of COVID, but mental health in general and the stigma around that. And then I premiered my first show, guys.
That's right.
Which was so dope. It was super dope. Shout out to Camilla Shuaib. I couldn't have asked for a better first guest. So shout out to her for sure. That was just a great conversation to have. And even though the show is She Speaks Volumes and it has a focus on women, I feel like the information that we discussed is just transferable between genders, right? So, moving forward into your purpose and finding happiness and, getting clarity with all of that is not just a woman thing. it's a human thing. So shout out to her. Thank you so very much for that. And we'll be doing it again next month with a new guest.
Right on. And that's the fourth Sunday of every month on Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
No, it was. I think I would like to say that it was a great show. I got you all in, and we will like you all to catch up to it. If you weren't able to tune in last night to the She Speaks Volumes premiere, please go ahead and go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, turn on your notifications,
Yeah.
so you won't miss that. So you won't miss the next show that She Speaks Volumes. You won't miss the next show, but you definitely won't miss none of our other shows that we do here on the Freedom Exchange as well. So go ahead to YouTube. Subscribe, New Freedom Exchange, turn on your notifications, and like us here on Facebook as well, New Freedom Exchange. But yesterday the show was very dynamic. The sisters did their thing. Marsha did her thing. Sister Camilla Shoaib. I mean, she's sharp, man. Sharp as a tack, man. Sharp as a tack. I mean,
the way that she was just sort of tying in the Quran to what we were discussing, like what I was thinking about this morning when I was thinking about her was that if she's who I see when I look in the mirror, then alhamdulillah, so that's all for her. Like, she was just real dope.
Yes, definitely. Deen, what about you?
Everything was good. Yesterday we did a lot of planning, and today I did some what you call it, in the trenches, promoting the new. I was trying to put the flyer on the screen. The new Creative Center coming soon. So we're in here in the studio, and got to meet the neighbors in the area, introduce myself, hand out flyers, and invited them to come on through. And so anybody who's interested in, as we've been presenting on this platform, creative content, YouTube, blogging, podcasting, social media management, we're creating a studio as well as our digital studio to provide those services to the community. So that's pretty much what I did. How about you, Bilal?
Myself, alhamdulillah, a pleasure to help to produce She Speaks Vinyl yesterday, and just making sure the tech side was okay, and just help out on the tech side, so that was good. Today, me and Deen were also guests earlier on Words Make People with Imam Michael Sahir out of Indianapolis, Indiana, speaking towards the theme of how to get our youth to come back to the masjid, especially those who perhaps are struggling or perhaps got off the railing, if you would, how to get them back. So that was a very spirited conversation. As honest, as we are, not cut and raw, we try to deliver the message in a way that is needed, especially the strategies that we're presenting on this platform as well, because I think we're doing a good job in framing the conversations and framing our conversations very intentionally and very purposefully. Also, we had another show. Shout out to Khalil Mukminoon.
Oh yeah,
we were guests. We were guests. That was like the first time for us. Well, right. Not the first time for us, but like, I don't know that we did that virtually before, right? We did it. We did like a phone. We did the radio. Radio before,
right. Block Talk Radio. Actually, with Imam Michael Sahir, is the first time we were on. All three of us were on, but this time we were on another podcast. Interviewed by another podcast, so podcast.
Right.
So
that was cool, though. That was really cool.
So shout out to Khalil Mukminoon out of Detroit with his legacy platform that his show that he has, and we were grateful to be on there to share our story of how we came into being in terms of this whole podcasting and moving into providing digital services and et cetera, et cetera. So definitely check him out as well, and check out that show as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm just super excited that there's a lot of good that's coming out. 2021 is starting to look good. Just want to say that I don't think we did express our condolences to Hank Aaron, his family, Hammering Hank, who had passed away, I believe, Thursday night or Friday morning on Juma. We want to extend our condolences and our prayers to his family and those friends. And he was a great baseball player, but also a great humanitarian, great worker, and good friend to Muhammad Ali. In fact, Muhammad Ali had said that the only person that he idolized more was Hank Aaron, more than he idolized himself. That's what Muhammad Ali said by Hank Aaron. And definitely want to express our condolences to him and Larry King, who passed away as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he passed away literally the day after Hank Aaron passed away as well. Both at the same age. I think they were both eight. If I'm not mistaken, they both were in their 86, around 86 or so. And I know that Larry King had Imam Muhammad as a guest on his show some years ago, and we're trying to find that recording if that's somewhere around here to show that. But just wanted to express condolences to those loved ones and friends who lost their loved one.
Yes, sir. Excellent. Well, we're here on part number 4 of Birth in the Nation, Growing into Community with our dear brother, Imam Sulaiman Salaam Jr. So we're looking forward to this discussion. And again, these conversations were inspired by our dear brother, Hakeem Sabri, who recommended for us to tap in to those who've made the transition, who are young, because they have something to tell and something to share that you're not going to find in the history books as of yet until we develop them, right? Because there's so many untold stories in our community. And sometimes you see movies, representing the Nation of Islam and different historical figures. But the intricacies, those who actually lived it day to day, it's important for us to present them to our community and to the world so they can get a balance to what's normally put out there in the media space.
Yeah, so without no further ado, we're going to read our beloved's bio. Our beloved's bio here that he had sent us, and pulling up here 1 second. Oh, here we go. There it is. So Bismillah. Let's see here. Start here. Okay. Imam Sulaiman Salaam Jr. was born to the Nation of Islam in late 1967. I attended University of Islam and Claire Muhammad School into the 8th grade before attending public schools. I live in and grew up in the Midwest, Kansas City, Missouri, to be exact. Shout out to Kansas. I saw a couple of people checking in here for Kansas.
The Chiefs.
The Chiefs are playing tonight against the Buffalo Bills.
Oh,
so, yes, right. Bills Mafia, but we're not going to go into that. Our minister was Nathaniel Muhammad, a.k.a. Musali Muhammad, son of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and brother of Imam Muhammad. May Allah forgive him sins, because all the Muhammad children have passed. All the Muhammad children have passed. So may Allah forgive him since we ran to paradise. We not only had a school, but also owned many businesses and had a great presence here in Kansas City. I firsthand experienced what it was like living around what we called at the time the royal family. The royal family. I mean, Dean, we talked about the royal family too, so we want to come to that part. The changing of our names, the spiritual life jubilee of 1976 with our community and Jim Jones's community. We definitely have to address that connection, and many other important milestones of our community. I joined Imam Muhammad and a Muslim delegation from his community in Rome, Italy, in 1998 for a Muslim Friends of the Folklore Movement conference. Shout out to our beloved friends, the Folklore Movement. And then served as representative for Imam Muhammad and our community in the year 2000 for the World Youth Day and the celebration of the 2,000 years since Christ. I founded one of the first Islamic rap groups, Islamic Force, in 1987. A female R&B style Islamic singing group, Shakila, and performed at our community's annual conventions from 1989 almost until we stopped having them. I am currently Imam of Al-Haq Islamic Center here in Kansas City, and he's again very interested in making his contributions today on the show. And without no further ado, we will bring on Imam Sulaiman Salaam Jr.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Welcome.
Welcome.
So Imam Sulaiman, we read your bio.
Yes, sir.
On this platform, we will always like our guests to give us in a snapshot. If you have 1 minute, your elevator pitch. What will be your elevator pitch if you were in an elevator with people and you had 30 seconds to a minute to say who is Imam Sulaiman? What would you say?
I would say, and if that was the parameters, and I only had 30
Yes.
seconds to a minute because imams are sometimes long-winded.
Yeah,
But if those are the parameters and that's what I had to deal with, I would say that Imam Sulaiman Salaam Jr. is a Muslim student of Imam W. Deen Mohammed, who is currently striving to be the best living example of the way of life that God, the God, Allah, invites all people to.
Excellent, excellent.
Nice, and that was brief.
I try.
yeah.
I
You
had
get
to
the
fill it
trophy.
in.
Yes, get the trophy for trophy. Get the trophy, man. For our brother, man.
Straight to the point. Straight to the point. That's what I.
Alhamdulillah.
That's who I am. Who I strive to be anyway. Alhamdulillah.
So we've been having these conversations about the experiences of various community members who've come through the Nation of Islam as children, and then through to the leadership of Imam Muhammad, and then to present day. And what I've been gaining from these conversations is just like the wealth of history that, as Dean said earlier, like you don't find that in a history book. And when I hear you all recount those stories, it kind of gives me like a nostalgic feeling, and I wasn't even a part of it. So tell us about your experience growing up in the nation, and then making that transition. But specifically right now, just give us like what it was like to grow up in that experience.
Wow, alhamdulillah, I'll do just that. But before I do, if you don't mind, I wanted to commend you all and thank you so very much for taking on this very important work and for following through with this particular series. I mean, with all of the work that you do, I've been following you and watching. You guys are doing exceptionally great work. And I just wanted to extend my appreciation to you for the work that you're doing. And I'd like to thank Hakeem Sabri for suggesting this program direction, the idea for this program, and then for reaching out to me and asking me if I'd be interested in participating. And I'll be honest, initially, I was just going to let them do their thing, and I was just going to tune in and listen. But as I was listening to them recount, I too, Sister Marsha, had the same nostalgic feeling. It took me back. I mean, while he and his siblings were recounting some of their experiences, I was like, I remember that. I mean, we were doing the exact same thing. I mean, even though I'm in the Midwest and they're on the East Coast, a lot of our experiences were very similar. Sajda and I are really good friends, and part of the reason I'm friends with all of them, as a matter of fact, but Sajda and I became really good friends because we realized how much similarity it was in our souls and in our thinking. And I contribute that to our experience growing up in the Nation of Islam. So to your question, I was born in late 1967. My parents had recently converted to Islam, the Nation of Islam. At that time, they had left Christianity and joined the nation. My father quickly was moved to a position of lieutenant. He was Lieutenant Roy, as they called it. He was Roy Curtis ex-Stovall. So that made me Roy Curtis ex-Stovall Jr. That's who I was. And most people are hearing that for the first time because I don't usually even tell people what my name used to be. But for the purpose of this discussion, there it is. I was Roy Curtis ex-Stovall Jr. I was a junior fruit, junior F.O.I, growing up in the nation at that time. I mentioned that my father was a lieutenant because he had a lot of responsibility, and a lot of people had to listen to him, to answer to him, which means he spent a lot of time, in some cases, away from us, but not necessarily so, because when I recount my experiences growing up in the Nation of Islam through the transition, My mother also was very active in our community. She taught classes for the M.G.T and etc. And she worked in the school. My mother served as a teacher for the school. She served as principal of the school at one time. But that meant that we spent literally 6 out of 7 days of our life at the temple, the mosque, and the masjid. Like literally, we slept at home. We had a few other activities that we did at home, but 90% of our time was spent in that environment. And so we were everybody that we knew primarily were Muslim brothers, cousins, friends, etc. We really didn't have very many friends in the early years who weren't Muslim or part of the nation. We didn't have very many. We had relatives, but even as it related to our relatives, for the most part, the only time we spent with them is if they came, my cousins came to spend the night with us and they went to the temple with us. And other than that, we weren't really going to spend the night at nobody's house. We wasn't hanging out with Johnny on the block, none of that. All our whole circle was people who were also in the nation. My father and my mother, again, had a lot of responsibility here locally. So again, that kept us very much engaged. My memories of growing up in that environment go all the way back. I consider, I want to answer your question, but I also want to try to make some connections to where I believe you guys want to go, right? We're looking at the past so we can look how we can move forward in the future. I always consider the fact that based on what I just shared, that my parents would say, this is brother so-and-so, this is sister so-and-so, right? And so they came into the nation. Some of these people they knew prior, most of the people they didn't know prior, but they were told this is your brother and your sister, and that's how we addressed each other, brother so-and-so, sister so-and-so, etc. So for them, I realize now, after talking to a lot of the pioneers, some of them didn't even like each other when they joined the nation. But because they joined, that's brother so-and-so, that's sister so-and-so, they had to give the handshake and the greetings, etc. And some of it was sincere, and some of it maybe not so sincere, which is probably why to this day, some of them still have some of that friction. But for us, we grew up from children, babies, being taught that this is my brother or this is my sister. So for us, even the people who I grew up with in the Nation of Islam, who don't even practice Islam anymore, those that have gone someplace else in different directions in their lives, we still see each other as brothers and sisters to this day. And everybody that knows us, if they do, well, obviously people that know us know who my actual siblings are. So for all these other people, they say, well, that's Suleiman's cousin, or that's his uncle. But they know that we tied in somehow. We're family. That's how we're observed. Even our children, as funny as it may seem, even our children today refer to each other as cousins. And everybody that knows them say they're cousins. And they're trying to say, well, hey, man, hold it, wait a minute. If that's your daddy's cousin, how is this? Well, like I know who my uncle and my aunts are. So how did this person get to be my uncle or this person get to be my aunt? But for us, I'm trying to say that we grew up in an environment where we really were brothers and sisters. It wasn't forced. We grew into it. And so we developed this sense of love and unity amongst ourselves that we have perpetuated on to this day. So I'm saying that I think it's important that as we look forward, that we consider creating, as you were saying, Imam Mikhail Sahir might have mentioned, environments that foster that possibility for our young people. And even some of my non-Muslim relatives that would go to the mosque and the temple with us today, they remember those experiences. They remembering having my father as a role model, if you will. And I have a cousin, I'm not going to call him out because he may be listening, because I sent the link for this to a lot of people. But one of my cousins, to this day, I'll tell him something and he'll say, yeah, that's right, man. I said, is that right? He said, you know, brother, you know, all praises due. I say, all praises due to what? He said,
That's right.
you know, brother, you know. So it had a profound effect on even the people who were around us. Going to attending the University of Islam was very important, and Clara Muhammad School was important in my childhood development. I went to preschool, no, kindergarten in a public school. I went to kindergarten in a public school. And I only went to public school initially for my kindergarten year. And why exactly I did, I'm not sure. I can't recall. But I do remember going to kindergarten as Roy Curtis X. Stovall Jr. My first semester, that's what my name was. And I honestly didn't like the name Roy. So just so you know, I didn't really like being called Roy. And my grandmother used to refer to me, my grandparents called me Chico. So even in the temple and the mosque, they called me Brother Chico. I didn't like being called Roy. But in kindergarten, you got to go with the name that's on the roll, right? So they would call me Roy Stovall, and I would have to say here, and it just irked me, but I had to. So I'm only saying that to say that this was around the time that Muslims were coming from the Nation of Islam were changing their names. And my father had all of our names legally changed in the courthouse, right? And I remember going after the Christmas break back to school, and the teacher was calling the roll, and she said, Roy Stovall, and I sat there. And she said, Roy Stovall, and I sat there. She said, Roy, don't you hear me calling your name? I said, my name not Roy no more. She said, well, what's your name? I said, my name is Sulaiman Zaire Ibn Salam. And she said, well, how do you spell that? I said, I don't know. I just know my name not Roy no more.
Just don't call me Roy.
That's right. But praise be to Allah, my mom was a seamstress, which is something that she learned and then taught as part of the M.G.T classes. And she made me a book bag, and she stitched my name on my bag so I can cheat when I was writing on my papers. You know, I could learn how to spell Suleiman. That was one of the greatest things ever happened to me in my life, that my name became Suleiman. Alhamdulillah. But I wanted to make that point because we went through that whole transition of getting our names changed and becoming someone else, you know, really. That was very impactful on us and our lives. But after that, attending the university.
Before you transition, that story you just mentioned, was that around the time Muhammad Ali also was saying, "Don't call me Cassius"? Because that's what I hear when you say that. Did you all have that motto in your home when you were growing up?
Did we have that motto? Yeah. Absolutely. It was a little bit later than when Muhammad Ali did that, but it was in that space. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah. Only transition that I was going to make is that I don't remember.
Well, while you're remembering, I just want to know, like, so I hear you saying that, you know, for you, that name change was sort of a positive thing because you didn't like the name Roy. But, you know, I just only can think of a child, you know, being identified as this one name for however long and then having that change. Like, there had to be some maybe difference, possibly. I'm saying there had to be, but maybe not. But I'm just curious, is that, like, did you feel different than other children with having to make this leap with your family with a name change?
I understand your question. I don't really think for me that was a big reach or a struggle for me or anything big difference for me, because to be honest with you, I always felt different. You know, I always felt different because our life's reality was different. I now, when I refer to that experience, I refer to it as us growing up in a bubble, because I felt like we was a bubble. Like I use bubble some may prefer a protective womb. We were in a protective womb. We were in a guarded space. You understand? And I believe that guarded space was very intentional by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. May Allah forgive him his sins and grant him the Jannah. That it was very intentional that we were being raised in a guarded bubble, a protective womb. And I say it was intentional by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because though I didn't know it at that time, in my older age, studying the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I came across a CD, and I still have it, a recording of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad back in 1963, I believe it was. He had a radio program. And on this radio program, I do have a copy of this, so I can get it to you at a later date, okay? But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said very clearly on this tape that he was not here to teach us Islam. Isn't that interesting? He said in this tape, and I'm paraphrasing, he said that you Negro was so-called freed by the slave master. But the slave master didn't really set you free. He said what the slave master did was like a stable master would do, open up the gates and let the horses run free. But he left the gate open because he knew you wouldn't know where your sustenance was going to come from. He knew you wouldn't know, you were going to come back, basically, is what he was saying. And so he left the gates open and we came back willingly. So our being set free, maybe physically, but mentally we were still slaves. So he was saying, so I want to teach you Islam, he said. I want to teach you Islam. He said, but your condition is so bad that you're not ready for Islam. You would not be able to accept Islam. You wouldn't be able to understand Islam in the condition that you're in. So he said, I have to employ a different strategy. So he called the Nation of Islam a strategy. And he said, I have to employ a different strategy where I deal with your condition. So he says, so for now, all I can tell you that Allah is God, Islam is your religion, and you should stick together. I have that recording. He said that. So it was an intentional effort of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to place us in a protected womb in which he worked on our condition and purifying us, stripping away from us a lot of things that were, some people say you can't drink clean water out of a dirty glass, right? Or if you got to pour all the dirty water out before you can empty the dirty water before you can get clean water to consume. So basically, I believe that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was structuring us so that we could be removed of all of the ills that we had and to be purified, because like even today, we're told, and it's interesting to me that people read this in the Quran and they take one meaning from it, but it says that only the purified ones can touch the book. I sat on a panel with another imam, immigrant brother, and we were at a church. And so one of the church members said, I read this passage in the Quran and said only the purified ones can touch the book. But what if I wanted to read the Quran and try to learn something from it? Could I? The immigrant imam told them, no. He told them it would be better for you to go find an imam or a learned scholar in Islam and let them explain it to you, because you wouldn't understand it. That he was referring to the purified ones as being the scholarly people. But we know that even Muhammad the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who was our Rasul, our prophet, right? Even the prophet, peace be upon him, there are so many times where you read that the prophet's heart was purified. I used to ask myself, man, his heart must have been really dirty. That the angels came and took his heart out and they washed it and put it back in. And then they did it again about 3 or 4 times minimum that I can point to, where you get this story that the prophet's heart was taken out and washed and purified. And if you don't understand that this is symbolic, then it can take you for a loop, right? So what I'm saying is that until you become purified, if you enter into the Quran, the reading of the Quran, and you got a whole lot of other stuff on your mind, if your intentions are not good, if your heart is not right, you're not going to benefit from what you're reading. So only the purified ones can touch it. The wisdom, the hikmah that's in the Quran won't come to you if you go to the Quran with something else blocking your way. So I felt that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was purifying us, that he created a protective environment for us to be conditioned, like wudu, entering into wudu, so that we can get the benefit of what Islam had to offer. I never felt any different because I was being raised in that space, and I knew that what we were getting was different from everybody around me. So the changing of the name didn't make that different for me. I remember listening to Hakeem, I believe it was, and he was saying that we were taught during the nation that Father Mr. Farad was Allah in person. And he was saying, you know, as a child, you hear these things, you've been taught these things, you believe it, you just accept it. I think I heard Sajda say that she never believed it. Again, one of those connections between me and Sajda, we had this conversation before. I never believed that either. I was taught that, I was given that, it was given to us in the school, etc. We had to learn our lessons as junior F.O.I, you know, the all the science, you know, the sun is 10 million miles away from the, you know, we had to learn all of that. That's it.
Salute.
Right
Tree
there.
of fruit.
Yeah, F.O.I. Yeah. We were being taught to all our lessons. We would learn all of those things. And taught that Farad Muhammad was Allah in person. That was what we were being taught. And as a child, even at that age, that didn't sit well with me. And I remember asking my dad one time, because you know, a lot of Muslim homes at that time had a picture of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad on the wall somewhere. We had a picture of Farad Muhammad on the wall. And I used to look at that picture of Farad Muhammad and I would study it. And I remember one time saying to my dad, "Dad, is that Allah?" He said, "Yes, sir, son." I said, "Okay." And I walked away. I'm like, that ain't God. I mean, I wasn't silly enough to say it to my dad, but I couldn't believe it. I couldn't accept it. The Allah conditioned my thinking to where it was impossible for me to accept that. Because you can't tell me that the black man is the original man, the owner, the maker, the cream of the planet Earth, the father of civilization, and the God of the universe, the black man is. And then you show me this image of this guy that don't look like the image that you just told me. You just had me rehearse these lessons, and then I'm looking at this guy, and he's not the black man. So if the black man is God, how could he be? So even in that elementary logic, I never could accept that. So alhamdulillah, one interesting thing about this transition too is that going from the Nation of Islam, and I talked about this protective womb, and I just finished talking about some ideas from Quran. We had Qurans in our house, but we didn't read them. Well, most adults didn't read them. They were instructed to take the Qurans and put them on the high shelf, a high place in the house. And a lot of the teachings in the Nation of Islam still came from the Bible. So we actually have Bible and Quran in my house. Interestingly enough, those of us who went to University of Islam and then Claire Muhammad School, interestingly enough, while our parents were not reading the Quran, we were being taught Quran in the school. We were being taught to learn surahs and to recite Quran in Arabic. We had an Arabic instructor, and my mother was one of our Quranic studies teachers. So some people were studying, were reading it and teaching it to us, even if they maybe didn't understand it. They were getting us familiar with Quran. So in that womb, at a young age, me and my brother used to compete. How many surahs you know? You know, at a very young age, we were being taught to read and recite Quran. So it's one of those blessings of that environment that we were in. And I mentioned that going to this school up until the 8th grade, our school only went up to the 8th grade. And so naturally after that, we would have to transition into public school. The University of Islam actually went all the way through high school, but by the time I had gotten older and we had transitioned to Claire Muhammad School, it only went up to the 8th grade here in our city. So I was able to leave Claire Muhammad School, and I attended my 8th grade year. Actually, I only went to 7th grade. I went to the 8th grade in public school. That transition was very different for me. That was the different part, because I already knew I was different, but I was around everybody just like me. In the 8th grade, I went to public school. I was teased. I was mocked. I was, isolated, disliked, et cetera, et cetera. I was the weird kid. I'm this guy with the weird name. I used to, I was in a program called Upward Bound, where we'll take, let me first, before I say that, let me say this. Almost every student that left our Claire Muhammad School, almost every single one, and went into public school, went in as accelerated students. I left Claire Muhammad School and went into public school in what they called a gifted and talented program, because they made us test so Claire Muhammad School wasn't accredited. And so in order for them to place you into public school, we had to get tested to see what level we were on. Almost every single student that left that school tested into an accelerated program in public schools. So say, for instance, my freshman year in high school, I was already taking college courses. But that just speaks to the dedication of the teachers and et cetera that was at our school, and the quality of learning that we were being given there at that school, right? So I was saying, I was talking about my treatment there at the public school. It was very different for me. People asked me, was I, like a holy roller? Do y'all roll on? I'll be seeing y'all in them white gowns. Do y'all be rolling on the floor? And do y'all do it? Everybody had jokes, man. I was in a program called Upward Bound. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like to take high school students, they go into a college environment, you stay on the campus over this. Yeah. So anyway, one of the guys I made friends with at the public school was also in this program. Turned out we were going to be roommates, and he didn't know. I knew, because one of the Muslim brothers from the masjid was one of the counselors for the program. And so he paired me with somebody I knew, right? So I wouldn't have to feel an extra layer of weirdness. But my point is, when I got to check in to go to my room, I see this guy that I went to high school with standing at the door, scratching his head. And I said, "Hey, Brian, how you doing, man?" He said, "Hey, Sulaiman." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Man, they didn't put me in this room with this dude named IBN." He said, "What is a IBN? Whose mama named them IBN? How you even say IBN?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, you know how to say that?" I said, "Yeah, because that's me." He said, "Oh, that's you." It was kind of rough. That was, it was kind of rough. I got the, Oscar Mayer Bacon, my brother, my Bacon, Oscar Mayer, all of these. Yes, sir, brother. The Lakers are the bomb. The Lakers are the bomb. All of these jokes. We got all of that. And, I eventually wrote a little children's book about it for my grandchildren. And it is teaching them about Claire Muhammad School. And in there, I talk about how, I said, "Do you remember when we were young going to Claire Muhammad School? Everything in the world seemed so cool. We didn't have a worry, not a single care. We were cool because all our brothers and sisters there. We had fun, and we also learned a lot. And we were strong because every day we had to face a lot. The temptations of the world were far away from us. That was cool, and I considered that to be a plus. But when we got older, something must have gone wrong. We had to stop singing the Sister Clara Muhammad School song. Off into the world, time for public school. Time to learn a new song and play by different rules. Public school was different. It made me feel out of place. I had to learn to move and live at a different pace. The people made fun of me and what I believed in. Made me feel like I was never going to fit in. So I decided to be by myself and do my own thing, but then they decided to come around me and hang. it was cool being around all of them, but nothing was like when I was with my Muslim friends, like the days at Clara Muhammad School. Do you remember those days? Because I do. That's my Clara Muhammad School story in a nutshell.
Yes, Imam. Imam got bars.
Bars.
Malita, I see you. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. Yeah. You want me to keep going? I can't hear you, Sister Marsha.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hear you.
Can you hear me?
I hear you all.
Oh,
I see your lips moving.
You don't hear me.
he got to check his check your connection because it went in and out.
I can't hear you either, Brother Dean.
Okay,
That's just
Oh, you can't hear none of us?
Yeah, we'll send him a message.
Hold on.
Well,
I
why
can't hear either one
while
of you.
he's trying to hear us, I just wanted to like echo
Did I do
his.
something?
Let us get his mic back together before I start talking.
Yeah, let's get Imam. Let's get Imam straight, man.
I can't hear any of you guys. Let me see.
He got bars. We can't miss none of this.
No.
Yeah. Well, can you hear us, Imam?
Come back. Come.
Oh yeah, my wife has you on her phone, but
He can't hear.
Leave and come back in. Leave and come back in.
I don't know what's going on with my connection. Excuse me.
Oh,
what
no.
I'm gonna have to do is listen to my wife's
Leave
phone
and come.
because for some reason I can't hear anything you guys say.
Well, yeah. If we just can we remove him and then have him?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe
No
if he but if we're removing him, will he like that's just removing him, not really taking him off?
How's it sound now? Can you hear, Brother man?
You want me to log back in?
Yes.
Yes, log back in. Log back in.
If we're removing him, will he?
Log back in. Man.
Okay.
It was getting too hot. Brother start.
I know. I was like, okay, all right. Like he came off the top with it.
Yeah, we apologize for the tech difficulties, but Imam will be back shortly.
Yeah, and we'll catch him up to speed when he comes back in. But as he was telling his story, and he talked about going from Clara Muhammad School to the public school system and being an accelerated student, you know, that was the case for my daughters too. You know, my Amina, who just went into high school, she came into the school going into honors English. And also when Anissa had first went to, they both go to a charter school now, but when they first left Clara Muhammad and went into that setting, they were both accelerated in that respect. So, you know, I just wanted to be able to echo what he was talking about in relation to that. And I remember Upward Bound too. I was both a student and an employee of Upward Bound, so I'm very, very familiar.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. Before I want to move away from the school because I know we on a time frame, but I did want to mention this. Like my sister, I have an older sister. Unfortunately, she succumbed to COVID about a year ago. So make dua, Allah forgive her sins and grant her the Jannah. I mean. But my sister's generation, I was mentioning that she struggled kind of with the transition, and so she didn't hold fast to the Deen of Islam, and in fact at one point she you know, so her name went from being Lynn Wyatt to Akila Salam. She went back to Lynn Wyatt, but actually I think my sister actually had two identifications, so she legally was both, but she went back to using her other name as well. And she I wouldn't say that she joined church or anything, but she just didn't come the full way with us into Islam proper. A lot of young people that I knew was in her generation disconnected at a certain point. And I have some ideas about why that may have happened for many of them. Again, I think a lot of people were not conscious of the idea that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, what we were given in the Nation of Islam, had Islam as its core and as its goal. But and we call it the first experience or the first resurrection. But there honestly was so many things about it that really wasn't Islam. I'm just keeping it 100. But I do acknowledge, as I mentioned, that it was a strategy of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to get us to Islam. And I say that for this reason too. There is a interview that you can find, which I also have, which I have to pull it up. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was interviewed in 1974, I believe. And he was asked, Mr. Muhammad, when you pass away, who will be the successor for the Nation of Islam? And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that when I pass, it will be a new Islam that will be being taught. And they said, so who will be the successor for this new Islam? And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, when the people have been shown Muhammad the Prophet in his proper image, if when they come to see the Prophet Muhammad correctly, and they have been introduced to the Quran and they see the Quran correctly, there will be no need for a successor. This was Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So again, it speaks back to this idea that this was a strategy, and it was a protective womb. That it's like the womb of a mother, where you get the nutrients and you get everything that you need so that you can come out of the womb a fully functional human being. The Nation of Islam provided for us that environment, that protected environment, that didn't have outside language coming in, that didn't have outside influences coming in, that only had what was being poured into us at that time, so that we could eventually grow through stages of development as Muslims into Islam proper. Allah says in the Quran that everything develops and grows or happens in slow, gradual stages. The development of us in the womb of our mothers, he uses that example, but he says even the revelation of Quran, creation, etc., everything happens in slow, gradual stages of progression. So the Nation of Islam was a progression, I believe, to get us here. Yeah. Yes,
but what is different? Oh, no, let me ask this differently. What was different about that protective womb versus what our children are experiencing now? Because when you talk about the protective womb and you talk about the nation and you talk about the fact that you were all encouraged that each other were brothers and sisters, it feels like this it just feels like this idealistic experience, right? And then we sort of fast forward to our children or just young people in general now, and our aim to want to keep them into a protective womb, but they sort of want something different. So what was different from that experience for you and sort of what you young people are experiencing now? Because I can almost imagine if I had a young person on right now talking about their experience growing up now, it wouldn't be as the only word I can think of right now is just like, it wouldn't be as this fluffy story. It would be like, I kind of want to do something different.
Yeah. Now there's a couple of pieces to that. Now I hope you bear with me and nobody gets angry.
Absolutely.
Nobody gets angry.
No, we'll be fine.
First, I'll work backwards. First, I'm gonna say this. Although the story sounds fluffy and beautiful, there were fluffy and beautiful elements of it. There absolutely were.
Okay.
But I even myself, even me, at one point said, I can't wait till I get 18 and I can get away from these people. I don't have nothing to do with them. I can't wait. As soon as I'm 18, I can make my own decisions. I'm up out of here and they ain't gonna never see me again. Though that came out of my mouth.
Right.
But that wasn't what Allah had intended for me.
Gotcha.
It was Allah in my mind. It was Allah guiding me that made me say that picture of Farad Muhammad is not God. That was Allah guiding me. So Allah says in the Quran, don't count your Islam as a blessing to him, like you did him some kind of favor. Islam is a blessing bestowed upon you. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala picks the Muslims. Allah does. And so I'm saying that for some of us that was in that bubble was for us. And some of us that were in that bubble, it really wasn't for them. That I believe that's just the cut and dry, honest truth of the matter. And I will say one of the things that's different is I remember, I believe it was Hakeem saying their mother was not accepting them not following Imam W. Deen Mohammed. It was one of my Sabri family said that. Their mother was not accepting. It's not an option. You can't come in my house if you're not following Imam Muhammad. This is the right thing to do, and that's what has to happen. I'm saying that to say that those people in the Nation of Islam, it's interesting that although they had less understanding of Quran and this Deen of Islam, this way of life, they had commitment to what they knew. You know, you hear some people say, I don't know if you do, but I had brothers tell me when I gently as a brother try to remind them of being more Muslim, they say, brother, let me tell you something, man. You know, I can't even be good as the Sahabas of Muhammad, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You know, all they had was La ilaha illallah, brother. And you know, they would get ready to give their life for this deen, bro. You know, I can't even be as good as one of them. And I'm like, why can't you? Why can't you? The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, I'm a man just like you, have a company of jinn just like you. Really what he's trying to tell you is, so can you. You just have to have the will, right? But these people in the Nation of Islam, even with little knowledge, little actual knowledge, has so much faith and belief and fortitude, and they wasn't standing for it. You know, my father told, I know he's going to kill me. But he always want to get me. My father was so, before he became Muslim, my grandfather tells it, my father was a trip. And he said, I had to give your daddy a whooping every day. He said, so, some of them, I caught him doing stuff. And the days that he didn't, I said, this is for that thing that you did that you thought you got away with that I didn't know about. Yeah, I'm getting you for that. He said, my dad was a trip. And my dad was, you know, being a young man, 20-something years old. But he said that he became so committed to the Nation of Islam. And my grandfather, a deacon in the church, my grandmother, you know, they real spiritual people. My grandmother never wore pants a day in her life. She always, because that wasn't ladylike according to the church, right? But my father told my grandparents that if the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told me to take y'all heads off, I'd do it in a heartbeat. That's the kind of dedication that they had to what they believed in. And just side note, so take my father off the hook, my grandmother said, I'm so glad when that other man took over. He said, I feel like I got my son back. I'm so glad when that other man took over. Praise be to Allah. They had that type of commitment. In my house, I was just reading an article that me and my brother were interviewed by our local newspaper. And they interviewed my father, and they asked my father, how is it that you have young men in today's society that's not cussing people out, that's not drinking, that's not smoking, that's not engaged in crime, and etc. And my father said, I can't take any credit for that. God did that for them. And then the interviewer said, but his sons have a different idea. And then they quoted me and my brother saying, my father was no stranger to a belt. My father barely let us listen to music in the house. We couldn't listen to popular music. We listened to some jazz, some Aretha Franklin, some Nancy Wilson, some of my parents' music. But what was popular at the day in the 70s? Oh no, y'all not listening to that radio, that mess. No, sir. We couldn't program our minds with that. Television was at a minimum. All the outside influences were absolutely at a minimum. And as I mentioned earlier, we spent 6 out of 7 days at the masjid. The majority of our time was there. We had family night on Wednesdays. We had something else night on Mondays. We had something else on Wednesdays. Now listen, my mother was a teacher or the principal. So we already spent all day at the school. But then we only have like an hour or two because there was something else going on for the whole family at the masjid in the evening. So we literally were in a space, a protected room where the outside influences did not have an opportunity really to come to us until we went to public school. You know? So I'm saying with our young people today, there's so many influences. There's so many things coming at them. So many, everything is pulling them. My oldest son did an album, and he called it The Program. And he started it by saying, every day of your life, from the moment you're born, everything around you is programming you one way or the other. And so our young people are being programmed. And their influence, all these other influences versus our little influence is making it very difficult for us.
Excellent.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to do a station identification. You're listening to New Freedom Exchange, your cultural expression for social dignity and community empowerment. This is part 4 of Birth in a Nation, Growing into Community. We have our honorable guest here, Brother Imam Sulaiman Salaam Jr., not Roy anymore. He's alive and well.
Not Chico.
Not Chico.
I think you might be walking down the street and one of your cousins see you and be like,
yeah. Now, to their credit, pretty much all of my cousins and relatives call me Sulaiman now.
Okay.
However, there is one Muslim sister who lives in Memphis, Tennessee. I just found out she lives in Memphis, Tennessee. Her name is Sabilallah. Sister Sabilallah. I don't even know exactly how old she is, but she known me since I was a baby. And I was at one of the last time I was at a Muslim convention. I'm walking through the hotel and I hear somebody from across the room on the escalator talking about, Chico!
You always got one. It's always one. Listen, you ain't getting rid of that Chico.
Nobody but Sister Sabilallah. And I'll let her have that. She can have that.
But I think we want to focus now a little bit onto the transition. We talked about your younger days, growing up in the nation, the junior fruit, et cetera. Now we're transitioning. You mentioned music. You got some plaques. You got look like a plaque behind you.
We got a few things. We made a little noise. We made a little noise.
A few things. He said a few things.
So let's talk about. Let's talk about the transition. Let's talk about the music. Let's get into that.
Okay. So as I make the transition, I wanted to speak on this too, just making this transition. One of the things I talked about the school, but I mentioned in what I wrote you that our community had a lot of businesses here in Kansas City. So I'm saying that to say that when we talk about building community, what it looks like, I believe that Allah blessed us to have a window, a view of what community life was supposed to be about. And I know that what we experienced, what we saw here, there were versions of it on different scales in other cities across the nation because they were building a nation, you understand? And so business was definitely a part of that. Farmland, all of these answering the 4 birds, even though that language wasn't being used, that was the direction of the Nation of Islam to make sure that we were developing everything that we needed for our sustainability and our success. And although some brothers didn't approach it correctly, they went about it by any means necessary, like for real, went about it in any means necessary, which in my own opinion, why some of it didn't last, we don't still have it, because you can't establish something on a shaky foundation. But it was the intent and the desire for us to be able to materialize all that we wanted for community life. So I mentioned that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son, Nathaniel Muhammad, may Allah forgive him his sins and grant him the Jannah. Musali Muhammad was our minister, our Imam early as we were making that transition. And he knew what he knew what his father's intent was, what his goal was. And he was mindset on having us be a model for that here in Kansas City. So, you know, they opened up the Salaam restaurant in Chicago. So Nathaniel Muhammad had us in the mosque that we were in. It was a big, huge, beautiful facility. And in it, there was, I guess, what they would have called a fellowship hall when it used to be a church. We purchased it from a church, but he converted it into a beautiful, beautiful space that we called the Salaam cuisine. Inside of the masjid, in the bottom, it had the big commercial kitchen in the big space. There was another multi-purpose room that had a stage in it and space where you could have events. And then the big musala upstairs, we actually had a balcony. And it's interesting because that place was packed all of the time, packed, like from bottom to the third floor of the balcony, we had people in there. But we also, down the street from our mosque, our temple, we actually, and then masjid as it became, we actually even had a Salaam cuisine restaurant down the street in a big strip mall. And we had Omar Bakery, and we had a newspaper, and we had a radio broadcast, and we had steak and takes, and we had, like, man, a number of businesses. We had big presence here in Kansas City, along with the school and everything, a daycare, nursery. Musali was on some different stuff back in the late 70s. I think he even had a Muslim discotheque. Don't ask me, but there was definitely one here. Don't ask. But yeah, I mean, we had a lot of things going on. And so I'm saying that I want to add to that. My father was the type of person that helped, even though he didn't want any credit for it. Allah belongs to praise. My father was the type of person that was always conscious of the men, the children that he was shaping, that he was helping to shape and mold. My father used to take me. There was a drive-in theater, right, that had an amusement park behind it, and it had closed. And my father used to periodically tell me to get in the car, and he would drive me to this place. Now, it was in an area where once we passed 75th Street, I already knew where we were going, right? So he would take me in the car and take me there, and he would park in this abandoned parking lot. And he would say, "You see this, son? You see all of this space over here, all this land? One day this could be ours. That over there, that'd be the masjid. That could be the community center. That could be the senior citizens home. That could be where we have the recreational thing. This is where our culture centers can be. This can be called Muhammad Way. And this could be Salaam Avenue." And then he was planting the seed in me for the future, for Islamic life, community life. He did that to me all of the time, and I never forgot it. I never disconnected myself from that vision that he planted to me. And I believe, inshallah, one day we can still achieve that as long as we keep working towards it. But my father was part of that in that transitionary period. The transition for some, again, it was difficult, and we lost a lot of people. We didn't have people from the ceiling to the basement anymore. There obviously were people who were more attached to the message, the old message of the Nation of Islam, right? And then some people just fell away. They just simply stopped participating at all. But there were a core group of us who continued on in the masjid. And I remember Sajda, I believe, and some of my brothers were talking about when the chairs were removed from the masjid. You know, that was a very interesting place, and I almost saw myself reliving the moment. I think one of them were talking about when the chairs were moved and they had all the space to run and play. When you're a kid, you kind of think like that, like, woohoo, so freedom. But yeah, I remember that. And I remember that was very significant. And I remember how much I'm kind of moving forward. I remember how much we were growing and we were developing as we were making this transition following Imam Muhammad. And I remember when the brothers, when we changed how we prayed, how, we changed from just standing and this to actually making salat. I remember those days and how significant it was, particularly for us young people. Because again, I said we had Arabic instructors and we had Quran instructors in school. So a lot of times we ended up needing a prayer because our parents were still learning. And we were given the adhan because some of them were still learning. And that was significant. This is kind of funny to me. I don't mean to be embarrassing for some. I don't know, you guys know about the movie that was put out, Muhammad, the message. It was about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The message. When that movie came out, it was a brother that played Bilal in that movie. Johnny, I can't think what his last name is, but he played Bilal in that movie, the first call of the prayer. And this guy, he was on Good Times too, in case you didn't know. But this guy, when the movie premiered, they had a premiere of the movie in our masjid. The place was huge. They had a premiere of the movie in our masjid. And they had this Johnny guy, I can't think what his last name is, but the brother that played Bilal came to our masjid to draw people there for the premiere of the movie. We were so excited as Muslims to have a movie talking about Muhammad the Prophet, and excited about somebody portraying Bilal, the first call of the prayer, and they forgot that this guy was just an actor. He wasn't really a Muslim. He was there when it was time for prayer, and they said, "Brother, can you get a call to prayer?" And poor brother, he was kind of embarrassed because, of course, he didn't know it for real. He was just, mimicking. But alhamdulillah, that was just a fond memory for me that I remember when that happened. I also mentioned that during this period of time, those early years, 76, between 76, 78, I mentioned that we had a new spiritual life jubilee, which was very interesting for me. Those were very interesting times. Johnny Seika played Bilal in the movie. That's right, Johnny Seika. I remember, and Imam Habib Khalil, he probably remember when Johnny Seika was there. He was supposed to get a call to prayer, but poor brother didn't know what he didn't know. That was a very interesting time, man. We held the National Spiritual Jubilee. It wasn't just here in Kansas City. Imam Muhammad used to do live hookups across the country, fourth Sunday hookups, right? And we used to have broadcasting of what was going on. So the Spiritual Life Jubilee was not just happening in Kansas City, it was happening in other places. But it just so happened that Imam Muhammad was considering doing some business or collaboration with Jim Jones in his community. Jim Jones had been visiting or communicating with Imam Muhammad. And I remember that this Spiritual Life Jubilee was held at our masjid, and Jim Jones came along with several hundreds of his followers. And that was very, very interesting to me. It was very different experience because, of course, I didn't know about Jim Jones then. I was still a child, what we know now, but it was even at that time, as a child, it was very unsettling to me that he and his followers were there. And I was trying to understand it, make sense of it, and they were there. And I remember them in what would be our musalla, up on the stage in the podium, and Jim Jones spoke, and they actually called themselves healing people in the masjid. You know how they, them healers will place hands on you. You got something wrong with your kidneys, I can lay hands on you. They did all of that stuff up there, and that was very unsettling to me. And I was very kind of disturbed by it. But it just raised questions for me, And I know that Imam Muhammad had a reason and a purpose for even communicating him. What was more significant, I would say, is that Imam Muhammad didn't come. He didn't come. He made some comments over the hookup, but he didn't end up coming to that event. And not very long after that, Jim Jones took his followers over. It was South America, and that whole event took place. So that was something very uniquely interesting that happened here. I thought that it was interesting too, because that we had Nathaniel Muhammad and his family, his immediate family here. So I talked about the royal family, being in the presence of what we called then the royal family, and how interesting that was. And I don't want to take a whole lot of time talking about that, but I just wanted to acknowledge that we had that experience, and some of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's grandchildren may be watching us today, because I reached out to some of them and invited them to come and reminisce with me today. So inshallah, some of them may be on the call with us, on the show with us. But the transition really for me wasn't difficult. For me, it was natural. It made sense, It confirmed a lot of things that I thought earlier in the Nation of Islam days, but couldn't really freely express or articulate. Does that make sense? Because of our environment and what we were being taught, some of the things that I believe I really didn't feel comfortable saying. I accepted the environment that I was in. I really had no desire to be Christian or anything else, but there were elements of the Nation of Islam that I believe was meant to be broken down. They were meant to be dissected, certain things that we were taught. And I don't want to keep going back. I want to move forward for time, but I just want to say this. For example, I talked about this Farad Muhammad thing. And not only that, the black man is original man, owner, that speech, but even the idea that that Farad Muhammad was supposed to be from the holy city of Mecca, right? That he was from the lost tribe of Shabazz. But we were told that he had a father whose name was Alfonso. and his mother was a white devil that got that Alfonso cleaned up. It just don't go together.
Right.
Yeah. So, so if you were thinking, a lot of those things were intended to be broken.
But in that space though, because you talked about in the transition losing people. I guess in those spaces where it wasn't broken down or we didn't get to that point yet, that was sort of the loophole for some people to kind of fall through, because it's just like it was a place where there was not the opportunity for them to get over the bridge, kind of.
Absolutely. Imam Muhammad once said, be careful who defines terms for you. Said words, meaning, and context are extremely important. And you should always be looking at the words, the correct association of meaning, and that is kind of determined by the context that is given, right? So I'm saying that words weigh heavy. So when we said in the Nation of Islam that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the messenger of Allah, some people looked at him, and that doesn't mean that he wasn't bringing a message. But people's perception, wrong context, they saw him as being a prophet of God. So to this day, think about this. Some people may not agree with me, but I think that some folks have. I love Imam Muhammad. I thank Allah for him. I thank Allah for everything he brought, everything that he taught. all the tools that he gave us to be successful at this life. I appreciate all his sacrifices. But I think that some have an unhealthy appreciation for Imam Muhammad. But Imam Muhammad himself used to think some people had an unhealthy appreciation for him. And he said, and I understand why you do it, but I wish you wouldn't, right? Because if you look at the psyche, the psychology of it, some people who saw the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as being the messenger of God, a prophet of God, see Imam Muhammad as being the son of the messenger of God. So it goes to this whole royal family idea, this whole holy uplift, you understand what I'm saying? So for some of those people, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad passed away, that was unacceptable. It's unbelievable. He's the messenger, he's the prophet of God. How is he? And it destroyed them. Two things real quickly on that. Many years after the transition, many years, my brother and I and some of the brothers that was in our group traveled to Chicago, Illinois to do a show. And we made Salatul Juma and Masjid al-Fatir. And when we went into Masjid al-Fatir, beautiful Juma, beautiful khutbah. But when it was over and we said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, somebody jumped up and said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's not dead. Long live Muhammad. Long live Muhammad. Long. They started chanting, and we were like, what in the world is going on here? And one of the local brothers told me, brother, you need to know that there are some people who still haven't accepted the Honorable Elijah Muhammad died. Some people think that he was being held in something preserved in Mos Maryam. And they thought he was going to think he's going to come back.
Wow.
So people still to this day. That's one thing. And two, I was at a speaking engagement with Ishmael Muhammad, one of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's youngest sons. And Ishmael Muhammad was telling people, it's interesting, he was telling the people that give up Christmas this year. And he was saying, stop spending your money. Don't buy no gifts. Don't do this Christmas. And he said, I know some of y'all want some Cavassier. I know some of y'all want some this. He was naming all these liquors. He was on a roll. And then he stopped himself. And he said, oh, I bet y'all wondering how I even know
that. That's right.
All these things. And he said, I'm going to be honest with you. Now, this came out of Ishmael Muhammad's mouth. He said, when my father, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, passed, I, like a lot of other people who followed him, lost hope. Our hope was in him. And when he died, a lot of people just went back to what they were doing before they came into the nation. And I was younger, but I followed some of them. And he said, so I was lost for a while until I came back up, I cleaned myself up and became a righteous Muslim again. So, yeah, I know a little bit about that because I was out. But my point is that a lot of people lost hope because their hope really was in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And they believed a lot of superficial things that really wasn't grounded in Islam. So if their journey wasn't really for Islam, they were getting what they were there for. And so when the focus became more about Islam, it wasn't for them. It wasn't for them.
Well, I think also in that experience, people were not only getting what little was there of Islam, the way we know it, but they were also getting pride in Black people.
Absolutely.
And so that may have been that mixed piece that sort of separated what they say, the wheat from the chaff, right? It made
Right.
that separation once the transition happened and more of Islam started to come into the mix,
Right.
those who were getting that pride in our people, the ones who were connected for that reason, I should say.
Absolutely.
Maybe that they sort of fell off because it was like, oh, what is this Islam thing?
Yeah. And part of it too, you made a good point. So we were building a nation. So it was important for us to have businesses and institutions and et cetera, right? But if you pay attention, if you study the history, then you'll find that in the late, the later years, before Imam Muhammad made the transition, those later years, those last few years, the pursuit of the material growth was causing brothers in the nation to lose their righteous self. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to ask oftentimes, who are you? As a rhetorical question. But the answer is, who am I? I'm a righteous Muslim, right? But in those later years, all you got to do is a quick study. Go pull up some Savior days from like 71, 72, 73. You're going to see a lot of brothers in there with they super fly hats on, they fur and mink long, you know what I'm saying? They at first you just saw the brothers in the suits and ties, the bow ties and clean cut F.O.I uniforms, etc. But if you go back and look at those Savior's Day in those later years, you see that they have becoming more material in their thinking. So Imam Muhammad, when he came through the door, he shifted the focus from those material things, because as I was saying earlier, if your foundation is not right, nothing else is going to stand. So Imam Muhammad began the process of focusing our efforts and energies on coming to a better understanding and grasp of this deen. In 1976, I believe it was, Imam Muhammad wrote a book, The Teachings of W. Deen Mohammed. I loaned to somebody, I don't have it no more. This is travesty. But my point is that in this book, he dealt a lot with symbolic language and biblical language and fairy tales and Aesop's fables and things of that nature, because he was basically what I pulled from it. He was sharing with us that we have been given baby language. We have been baby fed, spoon fed in small, like a baby book has mostly pictures in it. But as you become more intelligent, your intelligence grows, they start putting more words with the pictures. And by the time you make it to college, your book has almost all words. You don't need the pictures no more. So the Imam was basically showing us how we have been subjected to a lot of picture language and imagery and symbolism. And so he was showing us how to dissect that so that we could come to understand Quran better and have a more appreciation for Islam. And so then brothers began to get real heavy. They weren't really doing anything. They wasn't really doing as much in terms of business and development and building material structures. Brothers start studying and trying to get heavy and deep and, whoo, brother, doctor, scientist, whoo, brother, help yourself. We got on that page. But again, that's when you're trying to seek your balance, that often happens. The pendulum is way down here and you go way up there. And then you have to bring it back and it swings the opposite way. But eventually the goal is to balance it out. So at one point, Imam Muhammad even was saying, listen, we stopped. This is not verbatim, but this is the essence of what I got from Imam Muhammad. We moved your attention away from all these business and institutions and etc. because you were going astray. And so I put you on this path to give you a firm foundation. But the intent never was to do away with the good things that was in the Nation of Islam. The good things that we had instilled that was a part of that reality never should have went anywhere. We shouldn't have just sacrificed everything over here just to become more enlightened. You have to balance. Allah says he made everything balanced, right? So there was a intent, I believe, of the Imam to help us try to rebalance our lives. And that's what I believe he was striving for. When Imam Muhammad wrote poems, created a song, and he was doing that. He drew pictures and sold them. Because he would say, listen, you got a culture, you can't reject that. And if you won't do it yourself, let me lead you by example. We need business. You won't do it yourself. let me lead you by example. I remember one Ramadan session, Imam Muhammad had a banner on the back wall. He never even actually, that I recall, I can't even recall him just pointing to the banner, but I recall Imam Muhammad having the banner back there. And his talk was about something totally different. But I looked at the banner, and the banner said, "Think, Muslims, think. Allah chose as his last messenger a businessman." So here's the Imam trying to get us to balance our stuff. You know, Imam talked about how I became, this even goes into how I became an Imam. I was helping out at the masjid that I attended. I was already doing some nikah ceremonies and et cetera, et cetera. But what actually led me to a place where I opened a masjid was that I spent some time reflecting on what my reality was. And I have 3 sons and a daughter. And at that time I was saying, in reflection, we hadn't had a Clara Muhammad school fully functioning since I was around the 8th grade. So at that time, I'm like, man, that's almost 25 years. How could we not have a school that would be providing for my children what was provided for me? And I can't blame my parents for it. These are my children. So I said, either I can sit here and wait on somebody else to understand how important it is to have a school, or I can go to work trying to create a scenario, a situation where we can have one. And at this point, I'll have to do it for my grandchildren. But the point is, that's even how I even became an imam, because I was looking at how we were becoming really deep and intelligent and intellectual and reciting Arabi and have great recitation, but we were ignoring certain elements of our community that needed to be addressed. So I said to myself, if I die tomorrow and I stand before Allah and he says, why didn't you make sure that your offsprings had what they needed? And I can say, well, brother Imam, so-and-so, he wasn't trying to do this. And every time I said something, nobody would listen to me. I don't think Allah would accept that from me. So I said, no more excuses, Sulaiman, step out and do some work. Because my sons needed to see me doing work. Because I can't wait until I'm 70 years old, almost 1 foot in the grave, and then say, well, son, I need you to take this the next step of the mile, brother. They're going to look at me and say, well, what did you do? You went to Juma every Friday, Dad. You know, you gave some good coupons, but what, you didn't do nothing. So that's even part of why I even moved into becoming an imam. Why I opened a masjid. I didn't want to be the imam. I just wanted to establish the masjid and do some work. I was elected as imam, and I told them I would be the imam for 6 months until they found somebody else, but that was like 16 years ago.
Yeah, that's a beautiful recollection there. I appreciate you sharing the connection early on with your father and then yourself as a father. That definitely resonates with me. I have that experience as well. You know, growing up and now having children as well. I also have three boys and a girl as well. So you got to tell me a little bit how that girl going to come out, because you know the girl, you know, with the boy, she started taking on the big shots. But
yeah. I'll be right. Inshallah, she's gonna be all right. Inshallah, but I'll let you know. Alhamdulillah. But yeah, I'm sorry, bro.
We got some surprises in the chamber, man. You know, we got some surprises, some things that you know what I mean, you may want to speak to us about.
Oh man, alhamdulillah. So yes.
What's the context? Give us some history, man.
Well, in about 1989 or 90, this is beyond that, but in about 1989, I actually started a group called Islamic Force in 1987. At the time, you know, I wanted to be a big star or something, you know. Me and my brother and a couple of my Muslim brothers that we grew up with, we wanted to do our thing, you know what I mean? There they go. Those are the original members of the Islamic Force, right? That's Alim Hafiz, my brother Mateen Salam, Murad Bahayuddin, Jabir Ibn Haziz, myself and Yahya Bahayuddin. We were the original group of Islamic Force. But before we became Islamic Force, we had a singing group called Desire. And, you know, at the time, New Edition was really hot, and we wanted to be like New Edition. So we would learn all their dance moves and everything. And, man, we was pretty smooth with it. And we were doing New Edition songs and shows and talent shows. And somebody actually saw us and offered us an opportunity to go on the road with them. And then they was even talking about a record deal, right? So we were all amped up and hyped about it. But again, the sensitivity that Allah gave me, all the guys was really mad at me because as I considered taking this opportunity to go on the road or to do the record deal, I thought about us. And I said, I don't really think that's a good idea. I said, why not, man? I said, because, and I'm putting myself out there first. I'm like, I like girls too much. And I like girls way too much. And I'll be on the road, the groupies, the whole nine. Not a good look for me staying Muslim. I'm just saying. I mean, you know, to be true to myself and my soul, probably not a good job for me. And you like money way too much. I can see you being Eddie Kane. I can see you know, like, yeah, I'm not about to do that to us. I don't want to do that.
Not Eddie Kane.
You know, I'm just saying, I ain't gonna say who, but yeah, potentially Eddie Kane. So I'm like, no, I'm not comfortable with that. As a leader of the group, I don't want to do that. They were hot that we didn't sign that deal. But I wanted to redeem myself, one, and then two, I still had a desire to do music, but I wanted to do it in a way that would remind us to stay Muslim. So during this period of time, and I was looking at all the older Muslims just above me that moved away, and what can we do to prevent that from happening to our peers and to keep us grounded? And so at the time, I created the group Islamic Force. Most of the guys that were still mad about the other deal, they didn't even want to be a part of it. So Jabir, Haziz, and I first started getting together, and I was writing lyrics and writing songs. And Jabir and I did a song called Come to Salat, because remember, my idea was to do stuff that would keep us grounded. So we originally wrote a song called Come to Salat. It was me and Jabir. We performed it a few times. And it went pretty okay. Locally, it went all right. I had a brother passed away, may Allah forgive me, in the great paradise, Clyde Rahman. Imam Clyde Rahman. I love him dearly to this day. Love that brother. He came to Kansas City. We was planning a fundraiser for Imam Muhammad. And I went and talked to Imam Clyde Rahman. I said, brother, man, listen, I started this group, man, because I'm trying to keep the young people involved and try to keep us on. And it's Islamic Force. And Islamic Force, you got to keep in mind, it was Full Force, Force MDs, you know, everybody had a force in their name at the time. So I'm trying to rock with that. So,
I thought about Full Force when they showed the pictures. I was thinking about Full Force.
Yeah, we was in that space, and so that's part of what I was thinking. But Islamic Force had a whole lot of different meanings too, because it was symbolic, because I wanted to make sure that the power behind our Islamic teaching and upbringing would be behind our music. So the whole Islamic Force, you see our logo, it's got a Quran in it with the fist and all of that stuff, because it was real symbolic. But I went to Imam Clyde Rahman and I told him what I was trying to do. He said, let me hear something, brother. And we broke down and did something for him. And he said, if you brothers can make it to Chicago, I will make sure you be on the program for the annual convention. I'm like, what? He said, all you got to do is get there, brother. I'll take care of everything else. Get your room, get your everything, registration, everything you need. I love what you're doing. Just get there. And so we went to work. When I told the other guys that Imam Clyde Rahman was going to bring us to Chicago to do the show, like, yeah, we want it. Yeah, we can feel that, Islamic Force. And so, like, the second song I think that I wrote was called Temptation. So I was talking about the whole Eddie Kane and the girls and the whole thing. I talked about that was the basis for the lyrics. And so I wrote everybody's verses. Now I'm telling too much, because if you go back and hear the song, you'll know who I was talking about, because their verses was about the thing I thought they would be tempted most. subliminally working on us, you know. And then but when we went to Chicago, we actually performed a song that I wrote called God's Favor. And that's interesting though. We performed a song that I wrote called God's Favor. And when we performed it for the first time, we did that and we did a ballad. Because remember, we were singing like New Edition. So we did God's Favor, and then we turned around and did a ballad called For You. It is a song dedicated to Allah, right? And when we performed the very first time our community had ever experienced something like that, because we still got the New Edition moves and stuff while we rap it. So they sat there and they looked at us like nobody clapped. Nobody moved. They were like staring at us like something was really wrong. And I remember at one point during our performance, one of the brothers did that little spin and came over to me and he said, "Hey man, I don't think they feeling this." I said, "I don't either, man. This is gonna be our last time." He said, "Okay." And we spin on back over the place, and we was about to be done with it. But when we finished, everybody clapped. It was a moment of silence, nothing, but then everybody clapped, standing ovation. And when we did the ballad after that, Imam Muhammad got up and said, "Those brothers got it." I'll never forget that moment. He said, "Those brothers got it." After that, I received a letter from Imam Muhammad, and he told me, "Don't ever stop doing what you're doing." I feel bad now because I stopped. But he said, "Don't ever stop doing what you're doing. This is what we need." He shared with me something similar to what he shared with Brother Wali Ali, that he said that you can give a good khutbah, but you're only going to reach the people sitting in the masjid. You can write a hit song and you have the potential to touch millions and millions of lives. So don't stop doing what you're doing. Imam Muhammad quietly was a fan of ours, a supporter of ours. And context for that picture, we had just released an album called Soul Chasers. We were promoting it. We were doing a show in Houston, Texas, for their putting the neighbor back in the hood, and Imam Muhammad was there as well. And you know, he rocked one of our t-shirts, and you know, he came and gave us some encouragement and some support. But yeah, alhamdulillah, that's a good memory, fond memory for me.
I need to see that New Edition. Yeah, I need to see that spin again.
Don't play now, because I'll hang with the camera because I got the move smooth like
I saw you hopping on the 1 foot doing the spin in the whole nine.
Oh yeah, it's no joke around here. It's no joke. It's no joke. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, so we started the group. We did those performances, and the interesting thing I said there was an interesting thing about God's Favor. After we performed it, standing ovation and everything, people came up to us asking us to sign autographs. It was like, what? So we weren't ready for that. But, you know, we went on and wrote on whatever they asked. So they said, "So where's the tape?" I said, "How long ago it was? With no CDs, with no, where the tape, brother? We're about the tape. You ain't got no tape. Brother, how you come here and you ain't got no tapes? Brother, how?" So the following year, we came back with the tapes, you know, and alhamdulillah, our community treated us well. We did pretty well with that. I do want to mention, though, that on the flip side, this is how sometimes we can be. Brother said, "God's favor." Brother, why this don't say Allah's favor? You Muslim, right? You see, you putting out music is be Allah's favor. Why you say God's favor instead of Allah's favor? And I said, because I want anybody who believes in God to listen to it. If I said Allah's favor, only Muslims will buy it. If I say God's favor, because it was in record stores. So I'm like, I don't want just the Muslim market. If anybody who believes in God sees this, they might pick it up and buy it. So that's why I said God's favor. But if you listen to the song, the first thing I said was, yes, I do believe in the revelation Prophet Muhammad received from Allah, talking about the Holy Quran, a guide for life to help us stay strong. You're going to hear a lot immediately, but I got to get them through the door, right? So yeah, alhamdulillah, we did that. We recorded over a period of time, maybe 3 or 4 complete albums, and we released several singles over the period of time. We didn't just perform in the Muslim community either. That when we were doing it, when we first started, again, I wanted to be big in the industry. I wanted to. I went to an A&R seminar where they would have all these reps from different labels there, and I was trying to get signed. And it just happened to be a Muslim brother from Rough House Records was the A&R rep that I was sitting in front of. And he saw Islamic Force and he gave me the greetings and he said, "Brother, what are you doing here?" And I said, I'm trying to get on just like everybody else. And he said, "But what are you doing here? Do you understand that this is the music business?" I said, "Yeah, that's what I'm here for." He said, "No, do you understand that it's business? It's 20% music, 80% business. Do you understand what royalties are? Do you understand what," he went through this whole education piece for me. And ultimately what he said was, you don't need to be trying to get in this crowded market with all these artists. He said, have you considered how many Muslims there are in the United States? Have you considered how many Muslims there are globally? He said, if you could tap into 0.5% of that market, you would do better than most of the artists that's in the industry because they getting pennies on the dollar. You'll be getting 80, 85% that you get to keep to yourself. You don't have to give all your money away, brother. Most artists get 7.5 to 15 cents off of royalties after recoupables. Do you know what a recoupable is? He educated me. And then he instructed me to go read some books that I went to go read. And so my desire to tap into the mainstream industry totally went away. And I said, we can develop and create for ourselves a market within our own community and set our own parameters of how it's approached and how we dealt with, which is why I began to start producing some other groups as well. Because we were doing what we were doing in our own local area, we did shows of Black history programs and stuff like that. But people realized that we was one of the only rap groups in the area that wasn't using profanity and wasn't doing things that was offensive. So we started getting all the paid gigs in the area. The mayor was hiring us to do stuff. And then they recommended us to Carl Valley Art Council and other places. Somebody called me one time and asked me, could we come and do a week-long symposium on the rhetorical devices used in rap music. I didn't know none of that, but I wasn't gonna tell them I didn't know. I'm like, they said, can you do? I'm like, yeah, absolutely I could, but I don't really think you want to pay my price. They said, well, what is your price? And I'm just talking. I'm like, well, shoot, we got to get X amount of dollars a day. We got to have a per diem of this. We got to have first class air ticket. I said everything I could possibly think of. And he said, is that all? Well, send it to me in writing and I'll send you the contract. Cause he said, cause we were going to bring, what's his name? The brother from Public Enemy, Chuck D. We was trying to get Chuck D, but he's booked. So somebody recommended us to you. So yeah, this is just a fraction of what Chuck D wanted. I said, I played myself thinking I was smart, but me and my brother went and got in the books and learned everything that we needed. We went and did that, and it springboarded us to other opportunities. And so we ended up having, back in the early 80s, mid 80s, not late 80s, early 90s, our front page on the newspaper. The newspaper had a thing where you could call in a number and listen to something that's promoting a business or something. They had a call-in line where you could call in and listen to our music that followed the article that they did for us. One of the television stations did a special on us talking about hip hop for Islam. So we were able to take what Allah gave us, that we were only intended to help secure ourselves on the deen, and use it as a tool for dawah for many years. Alhamdulillah.
Excellent. I mean, this has been a great conversation, great exchange, excellent stories, excellent recollection of, the history of the evolution of you, Imam Sulaiman, the evolution of you, the evolution of this community that has evolved, that is still evolving, but has evolved. And we definitely appreciate you, and appreciate those who again pioneered a lot. Really pioneered a lot. And it's very refreshing to hear it in this platform. It's very refreshing to us to be able to listen to you and just absorb this. Like, I'm just sitting here absorbing it, like, and like all of this is happening, and like, you know, it's like you learn something new every time you sit down. You know
Yes, sir.
and it's just very humbling. Again, it's very inspiring for us to keep going and building off of what you all built. You know, as you said, you regretted not continuing making music. Well, you know, it's never too late. You know, it's never too late. And you know, I know our brother Kichebi, you know, he's working on New Africa Records out there in LA, you know, and I know that's going to be something really good for us to support New Africa Records Entertainment. But, you know, that's just a microcosm. We got a lot of young people, my peer group, who are artists. And, you know, this is something inspiring for them, motivating for them to hear this, you know, and take this to the next level. So we definitely appreciate you sharing and coming on this platform and sharing with us this evening. It's been quite a ride. You took us on quite a journey, man.
Alhamdulillah, thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate this platform and all the work, the hard work that you guys are doing is very valuable. It's actually very encouraging to me when we think about what our reality is and what it can be for the future, and that you guys are digging in to do the work to try to make sure that it continues. That's very refreshing and grateful. I'm very grateful for it. And can I say this real quick, because I know that maybe we're wrapping up.
Sure, absolutely.
When I became an imam, one of the first things that I did was I did an assessment test to see where everybody was in our community. And I didn't have them write their names on it, put anything. I didn't want anybody to hold back anything. I just wanted to kind of see where we really were as a community, so I would know where to start. And so I began working with our community and trying to grow them from there, right? Or have us to grow from there. But another thing that I did that I felt was important that I wanted to share, and it speaks to some of the questions I think Sister Marsha was asking me, was that I went back and looked at some of the things that were working for us in the Nation of Islam. And as we made the transition, what were some of the best practices, if you will, or things that we had in places that made a difference for us that we could then share or implement within our own community so we can make a difference for the future. And one of the first things that this is a simple thing. We started doing family night again. When we started our community, we started doing family night, bringing the community out, because I remember we went to an Eid prayer, and my daughter came to me and said, "Dad, I didn't even know it was this many Muslims in this city," because she hardly ever sees them, and then we have Muslims who are, spread out in different areas and groups, but we don't really have enough opportunities for the Muslims to come together and spend time and be around each other. And those bonding experiences or opportunities are priceless. And I've mentioned the dedication of my parents, or that parent group to us. Whatever it took for us to be grounded in this deen, they sacrificed and they made sure that it would happen. We can't just pray and wish that our children hold tight to this deen. We have to be willing to make the sacrifice and work hard to make sure that they at least have the opportunity. And we have to be tough. We have to sometimes tell them no. We got to tell them to turn their phones off or get off of the internet sometime, because like I said, we barely got to watch TV. We snuck and did it when my dad wasn't around. Don't tell him I said that. And we weren't supposed to listen to the popular music. Every now and then when he was gone, we still did it. But the point was, those were the house rules. And for the most part, we adhered to those rules, and it absolutely paid off for us. So in our desire to make sure that our young people have the best opportunities, we sometimes have to make some tough decisions that they may not like. And they may be like me when I was younger, that said, as soon as I'm 18, I'm getting out of here. But when I turned 18, getting out of here was not an option for me. Allah intended for me to be here. He never intended me. And I am a person that I can proudly say never left the community, not for 1 minute, not for nothing. I've always made Juma a priority. I've always made my community a priority, and Allah did that for me. And I'm saying that if we provide our young people with opportunity, Allah will choose the Muslims, and He will make sure that we have an opportunity for our success.
And me. Any closing remarks, Imam Bilal, Sister Marsha?
No, that was the closing remark. I gave mine, and Imam Sulaiman took us home. But Marsha's going to take us for the Grand Slam right now.
No. It's actually something. It's actually something that Imam Sulaiman mentioned. He said that his initial intent with the Islamic force was so that they could secure themselves in a deen. And so when I heard him say that, it just took me to the frame of mind that, you know, Allah gives us gifts and talents, and you know, we, as long as we're using that for the benefit of securing our place in a righteous space, then the sky's the limit, right? And so for me, when he said that, it was just a reminder. So I don't have anything like super profound to say. I think what he shared this whole time was profound, and I appreciate everything that you shared with us this evening. It's just always good to hear these stories and to see your journey through it, right? Like, you didn't necessarily give it to us from a frame of reference where, oh, it was all good and it was fluffy and it was, you know, peaches and roses and rainbows. You know, you gave us, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but you came out on a positive note on the other end. And so I just love to hear you all recount these stories, and especially what you shared towards the end about the young people and us having to make decisions, right? Because I think, and I have I have young children. I have teenagers, actually. So I think about their experience in the deen, and I think about, you know, your stories and how it's so different from their experience. And I know that there are times as a parent, like, you don't want to have to say no or, you know, be tough about it, because you feel like, I don't know, sometimes it feels like you're depriving them of something. But when I hear of what that you called it, when you call it the protective room, when I hear about that protective room, it's like, well, it may feel uncomfortable as you're in the protective room, but when you get to the point of, you know, that 18-year-old freedom, you wind up choosing what's right anyway. And so that's the hope and the prayer for all of our children.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I wouldn't want it any other way. I wouldn't choose another path, another anything for me. Everything that's happened along this journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly, was all intended, in my opinion, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to lead us to this point. And so I'm very grateful for it. I'm very grateful for the sacrifices that my parent generation made to get us here. And I'm not trying to prolong our time. I just want to say, because I talked about how they made sure we were being taught Quran and making sure that we could recite Arabic when we was young. Even when they were on post and they was doing something else, they made sure that we had the opportunity. You know, so I'm grateful to Allah for all their sacrifices and everything that we did. And I pray that more of us are willing to make those type of sacrifices. I mentioned how the disposition they have for the armed with Elijah Muhammad, with little knowledge, but what Allah has blessed us with, there should be absolutely no excuse for us. We have to make sure that we take this and move forward with what Allah gave us, and through the blessing of Imam W. Deen Mohammed.
Alhamdulillah, God willing, we live up to that, not just that vision, not just that spirit, but also there's a destiny at hand that we're trying to achieve. And we thank our dear brother, Imam Sulaiman Salaam Jr., for sharing with us his experience, his upbringing, in his community. He mentioned he's in Kansas City. That's one of the beautiful things about our community. We have different communities throughout the country who have similar experiences, but they also have their unique and different experiences. And this platform is a platform we like to share that. So for any future guests who are interested in sharing their experience of being birthed in the nation and growing into the community, you're welcome to join us. You can send us your contact information to our New Freedom Exchange show at gmail.com. For that, we also have a couple announcements before we close out. Next Sunday, we'll be continuing our community conversations with our brother Imam Rashad Abdurrahman, and we're talking about building healthy family life. Again, that'll be January 31st, 2020, 7 p.m. on this station, this dial. Also, I mentioned it earlier in the beginning of our show. We did get approved. Everything's a go for our first creative digital center, and we're going to have our first program this Thursday on this platform as well. And we're trying to duplicate these throughout the country. As the brother mentioned early on, he was talking about the lessons. I remember my father telling me one of the lessons was the Muslim has to be up to date down to the modern day and time, right? And so the technology, the future, AI, augmented reality, all these things we're in that space now. And so we have to create these environments for our children to get ahead, right? Just like he mentioned his upbringing, they create a protective womb to allow them to get ahead. That mission is still our obligation here today. There's another platform. There we go. Marsha, you'd like to read that one?
Sure. So this is Iqra, Islamic Quranic and Reading Academy. This is sponsored by the Sisters in Service. Those are my girls. That is a group that I am a member of. We will be having an open house on February the 7th, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And we are starting an Islamic weekend school that will be virtual. We're doing a 8-week segment that starts on February the 14th and will go right up until right before Ramadan. And then, we'll break for Ramadan, and after the Ramadan, we'll start another session. But this is a way for us to make sure that our young people, our children, are connected to the religion. I've said on many occasions, we have so many young people in our community who we may not necessarily always see all the time, but they are either Muslim just by name or just by association of for family, but they have no real understanding or connection to the religion. And we would absolutely be doing them a disservice if we allowed that to continue. So this is just one initiative to help bridge that gap.
Also, we have our flyer be coming out soon, but we also have a link available for those of you who would like to participate in New Freedom Exchange African American History series. We're looking for our young people to research our history, identify characters or even events in our history, and record them. And we're going to do a presentation to share with you all, God willing, during that month. So look out for that coming soon. If there's nothing else, we'll close out. Bilal did give us a clip we're going to share on our way out in reference to our history, I believe.
Yeah,
that's it. It's a wrap.
That's it for me, man. That's it. And we enjoy again. We want to thank Imam Sulaiman Salaam Jr. from Kansas City, Missouri. Shout out to all the Kansas Cityans.
We lost your sound.
Yeah, lost the sound.
Yeah, they knocked me off.
There you go.
Yeah, someone's calling me, but it's blowing up my phone now. So yeah, we want to thank Imam Sulaiman for coming on, and we appreciate him. We appreciate him sharing his story. And until next time, we will. Oh, Imam Sulaiman, send us some music. We need some Islamic.
Yeah, we definitely.
Some Islamic force, man.
No, definitely. I'll send it to you. I tried to grab it before we ended,
That's all right.
I couldn't.
That's all right, because we'll use it. We'll use it on this platform, and we'll reintroduce it, and we can always bring you back again, and we can have a more in-depth conversation about it for sure. But we definitely want some of that music, man.
Alhamdulillah, I would absolutely love that opportunity. And can I please just say thank you to you guys and to all of those people who I invited who tuned in today to listen. Praise be to Allah. And sister, note, next time, you already know.
Right. The next time, peace. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamualaikum.
It's going to be a 30-second countdown. Then we're going to go into the video. And then until next time, peace.
he said, well, not only me, I just happened to be there in the house. There were others there, other members of the family, maybe even non-members. I can't recall right now. Anyway, he said, yes, now I recall there were non-members too of the family there. It was on Sunday. And he said at the dining table, he said, there was once a man who interrupted Mr. Farad, the savior of the Nation of Islam, interrupted him while he was speaking. So he was a big, tall, heavy black man. So he was very black-skinned and had big, I'm just giving you the words of description. I didn't make this description. Had big black lips, purple black lips with bright red in the middle, in the center of his lips. And he stood up and red eyes. I mean, I got to give you the description that they gave me. And red eyes. And he stood up and he said, you say that God is a black man, but you are not black, I'm black. How come you don't let a black man be the leader? And my father said, Mr. Farad, the F.O.I was there. They started out with the F.O.I. F.O.I started when the movement started. The F.O.I, everything started together. They started, the first day they started preaching, they had F.O.I, M.G.T, they had all that, guards and everything. My father said, Mr. Farad did not even respond to him. I'm saying Mr. Farad. My father didn't say Mr. Farad. He said, our Savior. Mr. Farad did not respond to this big black man. And he refused to let the guards throw him out. I, as a young man, young minister, I was sitting at the table once with my father. And one of his so-called representatives, well, he did preach for Elijah Muhammad. He challenged the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He said, you got yours, when are we going to get ours? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad did not respond to him. I was in the basement of our house. My father had just bought a new house. We were living in a cheap frame house, wood frame house on 6116 Michigan, south side of Chicago. We moved into the more affluent neighborhood, 4847 Woodlawn, in the area of University of Chicago. Nice big house they call mansion, and it was a mansion. It was a mansion, and a minister from the Nation of Islam asked to see it. He lived on the East Coast. My father welcomed him to come see his house. We really had not got completely settled there. So it was the habit of the boys, if there was the oldest boy present at the house would stay with my father if there was someone not of the family with him. And that was expected of us. My father and mother trained us like that. So I'm a little boy, I couldn't do anything. I don't think I was more than maybe about 13 years old. And I'm walking around with my father and walking around with him. And he said to my father, this is real nice, dear Holy Apostle. When are we going to get ours? And my father did not respond to him. I said several times, speaking, that I got people I know that are working to undermine me. They're right around me. They're working to discredit me. They're not working to destroy me because they know my staying around is their existence right now. Without me, they wouldn't be around either. But they're hoping when I die, they can become the leader, so they don't want you to like me too much because they're going to knock me down. They're going to be ready to knock me down and put themselves up higher after I'm dead. That's what they think. That's what they plan. So I said, I know I got people all around me that's not with me, but I keep them around me. I keep them around me. Why? Because they can make a contribution. If they're making a contribution, they're helping what we're doing, they're contributing to this work. I don't care what they care about me personally. They don't have to like me. Do you have to be in love with the hammer that drives the nails? You want to put something together? Oh, you have to be in love with the hammer. The hammer does the job. And as long as you don't fear the hammer is going to be animated and hit you over the head, You use it and put it up and take it out and use it again when you need it. Well, that's the way I do these people. And I thank Allah for their contributions. But I know their intent. They are not honest. They are not truthful. They are envious. They are people who want to take attention, steal attention from others so they can have more attention to themselves. So I wanted you to be aware of these things. I know many of you are, but I wanted you to be aware of those things. And now I want to conclude this and say to you that I am happy. I'm very happy. They don't make me sad. I have much more to be happy about than I have to be sad about. I am happy. And this community is growing more beautiful and more beautiful all the time. And we are getting better and better people of character and intelligence all the time. Our professional numbers, the numbers of professionals among us are just growing all of the time. So I feel very good. And you go back and respect your leaders, even those thieves that I mentioned. Respect them and pick them up when you need them to hammer a nail or cut a piece of wood or whatever.
They ask me about religion, why? They ask me about my race and my tribe. They ask about my complexion, why? When they ask me, this is what I say. My grandfather was a Muslim, and my daddy was a Rasta. They were searching for the truth, and the Quran gave the answer. They put their hands up to the sky, and they ask the Lord why. We not gonna worship the creation, we only pray to the Creator. Guidance is a gift that the Lord shall give to any man or woman, whether small or big. God said you must reflect, you have to use your mind. So now you know the reason why. My grandfather was a Muslim, and my daddy was a Rasta. They were searching for the truth. In the Quran they found the answer. They put their hands up to the sky, and they asked the Lord why. We not gonna worship the creation, we only pray to the Creator. The messenger of God, the best of creation. Peace and blessings be upon him and his one nation. He came to teach the world, came to free our souls, and that charity comes from a smile. So when you see me on the road, give me a smile. I say salam alaikum to my brothers, why? Cause it's peace for you and it's peace for me. Peace from my granddaddy. My grandfather was a Muslim, and my daddy was a Rasta. They were searching for the truth. In the Quran they found the answer. They put their hands up to the sky, and they asked the Lord why. We not gonna worship the creation, we only pray to the Creator. My grandfather was a Muslim, and my daddy was a Rasta. They were searching for the truth. In the Quran they found the answer. They found what they were looking for. They put their hands up in the sky, and they asked the Lord why. We not gonna worship the creation, we only pray to the Creator. My grandfather was a Muslim, and my daddy was a Rasta. They were searching for the truth, and the Quran gave the answer. They put their hands up